We're talking to Mary Louise Serafine from Austin, Texas. This is New Voices with Stephanie Fisher. Welcome back, Mary Louise. And speaking of your wonderful state, now, how do you feel about the Dixie Chicks? I think they got a little bad rap. I mean, they're in London and they weren't proud of us bombing a country that didn't have weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah, and they said they were embarrassed to be from Texas, where the president was from.
I understand that.
And recently, the Dixie Chicks said that they were upset about being censored. That the population, I guess, the people who wouldn't buy their tapes and CDs and stuff, and wouldn't come to their concerts, were trying to censor them. I think that the Dixie Chicks were entitled to say whatever they wanted to say. I think that it was sort of ill-advised or bad form or anti-patriotic to say a comment like that while we're in a war and say it in another country. But I wouldn't necessarily try to prevent them from doing it, except that if, as a result of that, people don't want to buy their music or pay to attend their concerts, we're entitled to do that as much as we want, and I certainly did. I've stopped listening to the Dixie Chicks and not buying their stuff, and it's too bad because they're musically, they're a great group.
But don't they have freedom of speech? And the idea you were buying the Dixie Chicks make me happy, but they have a right to freedom of speech. And I'm going to tie into something. Okay, we're fighting for democracy in Iraq. We're in a country where they can open our mail, take our land, and listen to our phone conversation and tell us that we shouldn't be anti-American. I mean, what's going on? What's it all about? Where's my democracy? What about me?
I think there's plenty of democracy around. I mean, there needs to be some surveillance in order to protect the country from terrorists.
Sister,
sorry
what have they done to you in this country? I'm going to get on a plane, come down there, kidnap you, and what have they done to you? Okay, carry on. You're like big sister, big brother. Okay.
There needs to be some surveillance of telephone conversations and communication because we're subject to an enormous terrorist threat, and it's definitely coming. The ordinary, everyday American, myself included, I'm certain that my lines have never been bugged, my mail's never been opened. As far as I know, I've never lost any mail, and I certainly feel that I am still in a democracy. I think the threat to my freedom and my democracy is the greater threat is from terrorism rather than from the federal government. Do you want me to answer about?
You think terrorists going to come to Austin, Texas? I'm sorry.
I certainly think that there may be attacks within the United States, and that if there are, there will be economic repercussions that will affect me and everyone else in the country, regardless of what city any attack takes place in.
Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You had something you said you wanted to.
Well, yeah, I was going to go back to the freedom of speech thing. The Dixie Chicks have freedom of speech. They already have freedom of speech because they can say whatever they want, and they did say whatever they want. But at the same time, we have freedom of buying or freedom of purchasing. We can stop purchasing their music and their shows and stuff if we want to, and my freedom to not listen to their music because I don't agree with them politically is just as worthy of freedom as their freedom of speech. Freedom of speech doesn't mean that they can say anything they want to, and I have to ignore it. I guess that's my point.
Well, I think there's a lot of subversive groups in this country that say whatever they want, and they have the right to say it. We have the Klan. We have the Nazis. We have so many people have the right to say whatever they want.
They do.
That's freedom of speech, and they have the right to say it.
They They certainly do. And at the same time, I don't have to support them or contribute to them or pay any attention to them if I don't want to. But
nobody's bullying
right
them, like the Dixie Chicks. I think they got a raw deal. No one's bullying them.
I don't believe anybody's bullying.
Well,
the
I
Dixie
think
Chicks
it's
at all.
It was a manipulation. I mean, the government. It was all over the media. The government put in their 2 cents. It's like Bill Maher's in his talk show. He didn't say anything against the war, and his show ended. I mean, if you say anything, it tells me that this corporate industry and this government is conservative. Because if you say something conservative, anti-conservative, you're gone.
Well, I don't know. I don't know anything about that situation, but yes, the government currently is somewhat conservative. I personally don't think it's conservative enough. So I would quibble whether it's as ideal as I would want it to be. But yeah, I think that's right. It's conservative in the sense of a conservative stance in national defense is very pro-American and in favor of protecting the country and preserving the kind of democracy that we have. I don't think that there's a giant conspiracy between, the government and the corporations and the military or what the other sort of liberal battle cries are. I just don't think that is the case.
And you believe in apple pie.
That's probably
White ice cream.
That's
and sunshine
right.
on rainy days. Okay.
I think that would be right.
Speaking of the government, what's your feeling on the CIA? This administration leaking the name of a CIA agent? Like we have Scooter Libby currently his trial. I mean, he's fighting for his life. He's saying he's being used. That Karl Rove was really the person. He's the fall guy. But Scooter Libby didn't have this clearance. The president or the vice president.
Yeah, I have to beg off of that topic because I haven't followed it closely enough to be intelligently informed. I've followed it somewhat. I haven't followed it enough to speak on it. As far as I'm concerned, there are laws about leaks of certain information, and there's also within the CIA it varies. What kind of protection a person is entitled to varies with the kind of position they're in. Whether Valerie Plame was entitled to those protections, I don't know for sure.
Her identity, just to shut up her husband for saying that we shouldn't be going to Iraq, and that there are no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and we shouldn't be there. So this Cheney gets upset, and then they call in Judith Miller from the New York Times, and tell Judith Miller that the former ambassador's wife is a CIA agent, and give out her name.
Well, if we can talk about in general our frame of mind, I would say in general my frame of mind on this issue is that I would side with Cheney on this, but I would have to admit I haven't followed it as closely as I could. But if I had to take a prejudice one way or the other, I'm not informed about it. Here, how about this? I'm not informed about it well enough to really speak on it. But if I had to just take a guess, I would side with Cheney, and I think he would be, more trustworthy on this than the other players that we have.
Leaking out her identity, and he's trustworthy. He's the one that told Scooter Libby, and they're the ones that leaked it to Judith Miller, who went to jail for 45 days before she would tell who her source was.
I recognize that's one version of the facts. It's just not the version of the facts that I buy.
Okay, let me ask you this. Now, is Dick Cheney in your living room, or are they going to call you to come work at the White House?
Not that I know of.
Because Fox News should be calling you.
Probably.
But, okay, how do you feel about the Speaker of the House? Are you happy that it's a woman, or she's not a Republican, or?
I don't think Nancy Pelosi has shown enough leadership and enough intelligence on the issues of the day to to be the speaker. I'm very, very disappointed in the American population, for American citizenry, for the American voters, I should say, for electing a Democratic House and Senate.
That's how I felt about the president.
There's nothing that can be done about Nancy Pelosi. She's there, but and if we play by the rules, she's there. I really don't care whether it's a woman or not a woman. I don't support affirmative action, so I'm not necessarily happy or otherwise about whether an officer of the government is a man or a woman. But
how can you not? That's how we got our president. We got him by affirmative action, and everyone they picked from Clarence Thomas, it was affirmative action on their side. When you're Republican, Condoleezza Rice, what was her background? Colin Powell. They jumped over 149 people to get to Colin Powell. Affirmative action. Bush going to Yale. Affirmative action in a different way. I'm just in shock. And
well, what I said is that I don't support affirmative action. So normally, affirmative action means promoting women and minorities without reference to some kind of merit, and I'm not in favor of that. I'm not in favor
well, then we
of that
shouldn't
at
have
all.
this president, even though he's not. He's a minority for being a nut. But okay, thank you so much, and you have to come back after I have my sedative. You have to come back, and after. And
well, thank you for having me on the show. I've tried to present as clearly as I can the conservative viewpoint.
And you have done them proud, and I thank you very much. It's been a joy. See, we can get along, Democrats and Republicans. This is Stephanie Fisher with New Voices on TribecaRadio.net.